had never felt so small in my entire life. One moment, I was standing there, confident in my work, holding the presentation I'd spent weeks preparing. The next, Damien Voss, my boss, leaned back in his leather chair, a smirk curling on his lips, and said, "Well, this is pathetic. I expected better. You're fired." The room went silent. My stomach twisted. I felt my face heat up, my hands trembling. Fired. In front of everyone. My heart hammered against my ribs like it was trying to escape. I wanted to speak, to argue, but the words wouldn't come. "Excuse me?" I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "Do I need to repeat myself?" Damien said, his tone dripping with mockery. "You're worthless to this company. Pack your things." A few colleagues chuckled. Others avoided my eyes, pretending I didn't exist. I saw Elena glance at me from across the room, concern etched into her face. I don't understand," I stammered. "I worked so hard. The last quarter—" "Save it," he interrupted, waving me off like I was an insect. "You're done." I swallowed hard, trying not to cry. My throat felt raw, my chest tight. Memories of late nights, endless emails, and sacrifices I had made for this company flashed before me. And now, none of it mattered. Elena hurried to my side as I walked out, my hands clutching my laptop like it could protect me. "Don't listen to him," she whispered. "He doesn't know what he's doing." I shook my head. He knows exactly what he's doing. He wants me humiliated in front of everyone. We walked to the elevator in silence. My mind was a storm of anger, disbelief, and shame. I wanted to scream, throw something, anything, but I didn't. Instead, I felt a fire start to grow inside me, a dark, furious determination. Once I stepped out onto the street, the cold air hit my face. I pulled my coat tighter around me, my fingers trembling. I replayed every detail of the morning, every smirk Damien had thrown my way. I could see it clearly now. He had always seen me as expendable. I had trusted him. I had believed in him. And he had shattered me. Yet beneath the humiliation, beneath the anger, a thought began to form. I whispered it to myself, barely daring to believe it. This isn't the end. I will rise. And when I do, he will regret this day more than I can imagine. The city bustled around me, people laughing, rushing, living their lives. None of them knew the storm that had just erupted inside me. I swallowed my pride, squared my shoulders, and walked on, letting the rage fuel each step. That night, I sat alone in my tiny apartment, staring at my reflection in the darkened window. The woman staring back at me had tears on her cheeks, but her eyes were burning. I will not be broken. Not by him, not by anyone. And with that, I made a silent vow. I would rebuild, I would grow stronger, and one day, Damien Voss would pay for this day more than I can imagine. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, Damien's smirk haunted me. The way he leaned back in that chair, the casual cruelty in his voice, it felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I wanted to scream, to beg for an explanation, but I knew it wouldn't matter. Nothing would. By morning, the anger had settled into a dull ache, a heavy weight pressing against my ribs. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my hands, trying to make sense of what had happened. How could he do this to me, I kept asking myself. I had given him loyalty, ideas, late nights, everything. And yet here I was, discarded like trash. I called Elena. I can't stop thinking about it, I confessed, my voice shaky. He humiliated me in front of everyone. I know, she said softly. I saw it. I wanted to storm in there and slap him myself. I chuckled bitterly. You would have gotten fired too. There was silence for a moment. What are you going to do? She asked. I didn't answer. I didn't know yet. My mind was spinning, replaying every moment, every slight, every little humiliation Damien had thrown at me over the past year. And then, deep inside, something shifted. I felt a flicker of clarity. Rage wasn't enough. Tears weren't enough. I needed power. I hung up the phone and walked around my apartment, pacing. My mind raced with possibilities. Freelance work, new industries, learning business strategies Damien never even noticed. I could do it all. I could disappear from his world and come back stronger, smarter, untouchable. The thought terrified me and thrilled me at the same time. I could feel my pulse quicken as I made a mental list. Reinvent myself. Gain skills Damien couldn't imagine I had. Build a network, quietly, without anyone knowing. Wait and rise. By midday, I had cleaned out my desk, packed the few personal items I had left at the office, and returned home. I sat at my small kitchen table with my laptop, determined to make a plan. I opened tabs for online courses, business news, freelance networks, anything I could use to rebuild. The first step was survival. The second was growth. And the third, well, I wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. But as I stared at the screen, a new thought made my chest tighten. This isn't just about revenge anymore. It's about me, my life, my dignity. I will not let anyone control me again. I could feel the fire inside me, no longer just anger, but determination. Every humiliation, every insult, every look of pity from my colleagues, they would all become fuel. Fuel that would make me unstoppable. By the end of the day, I had drafted a plan to move to a new city, take on freelance work to sustain myself, learn skills Damien had dismissed, and slowly build influence in places he couldn't touch. I would disappear, yes, but not for long. And when I returned, I would be someone he couldn't ignore. I leaned back in my chair, exhausted but focused. The night was quiet, and for the first time since the firing, I felt a flicker of hope. I whispered to myself, barely audible, I'm not broken. Not yet. And I won't be, not ever. I left the city a week later. Not quietly, exactly. I wanted to erase every trace of the woman Damien thought he knew. My apartment was gone, my phone disconnected, and my social media accounts wiped. I boarded a bus with nothing but a suitcase and a notebook filled with ideas. I was no longer the me that had been humiliated. I was becoming someone else, someone stronger. When I arrived in the new city, I rented a small studio apartment above a quiet cafe. The streets were unfamiliar, but that didn't scare me. I walked with my head held high, observing people, imagining how I could carve a space for myself here. I needed a new name, a new persona. Sophia Kane. It had a nice ring to it. Clean, strong, untouchable. My first week was rough. Freelance work barely paid the bills, and I had to live on instant noodles and coffee. But every rejection, every small failure, only made me angrier. sharper. I studied business strategies, marketing trends, even psychology. I wanted to understand power, the kind Damien had used so effortlessly to crush people. Then I met Marcus. I bumped into him at a small networking event, and he nearly spilled his coffee on my laptop. "Watch it," I said, but there was a smile behind my annoyance. "Sorry," he said. "Let me make it up to you. I'm Marcus. I work in consulting, sometimes coaching new talent. You seem ambitious." I raised an eyebrow. "Ambitious. That's one word for it." He laughed. And somehow I knew he understood more than I was willing to say. He asked me about my goals, my skills, and, without judgment, offered advice I hadn't expected. "You've got fire," he said finally. "Most people your age, after being knocked down, would just crumble. You're thinking bigger, smarter. Don't waste it." I wanted to hide the raw part of me, the part still aching from Damien's betrayal, but something about him made me willing to be honest. I I had a boss. He ruined my life. I'm rebuilding it, but it's hard. Marcus nodded, and I realized he didn't pity me. He respected my anger, my determination. "Good," he said. "Use that. Channel it. The world doesn't care about excuses. It rewards results. You can do this. I can help you." That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at my reflection. The woman in the mirror wasn't the same person who had been humiliated. She had a new name, a new plan, and a new fire burning in her chest. Sophia Kane wasn't weak. She wasn't naive. She was learning, growing, and slowly building a life that Damien could never touch. And for the first time since that day, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. I whispered into the dark. This is just the beginning. One day, he'll remember my name. And when he does, I'll be someone he fears. By the second month in the new city, I had settled into a rhythm. Freelance work kept me afloat, but every spare moment was spent learning, observing, and planning. I studied Damien like a case study, replaying memories of his arrogance, his weaknesses, the way he underestimated me. I knew that understanding him was the key to rising above him. Marcus became my anchor. "You're not just rebuilding yourself," he said one evening over coffee. "You're creating leverage. Every person you meet, every connection you make, think of it as a thread you can pull later. Power is subtle." I nodded, absorbing every word. "I want to be untouchable," I admitted. "I want to succeed without anyone being able to hurt me the way Damien did." "Good," he said with a smile. "Then stop thinking small. Start moving quietly, but strategically. Make them underestimate you. That's when you strike." I spent nights making lists. Industries Damien had influence over, the people who admired him blindly, and the opportunities he overlooked. I wasn't ready for revenge yet, not publicly, but I was planting seeds. Every small alliance, every new contact was a step toward the eventual confrontation I could barely admit I wanted. One evening, I met Liam at a small business seminar. He was charming, articulate, and seemed almost too eager to help. "I used to work with Damien," he admitted casually over drinks. "Let's just say I didn't like the way he ran things. He leaves a lot of talent untapped." I studied him carefully. Could I trust him? I asked him, "And you want to help me how?" I asked, careful not to reveal too much. "Information," he said with a grin. "I know his weaknesses. I know his habits. If you want to rise, I can guide you." Something in me wanted to reject him outright,
But my instincts told me to wait, observe, test him. I agreed to meet again, cautiously. That night I reviewed my notes, my plans, my lists, every piece of my new life, every connection, every skill I was learning was a step toward becoming the person Damien never saw coming. I realized that my anger had transformed. It wasn't just rage anymore. It was strategy, patience, and careful calculation. By the end of the week, I had drafted a more detailed plan. Keep growing my skills, quietly but aggressively. Build a network of allies, some loyal, some cautious. Gather intelligence on Damien's professional moves. Wait for the perfect moment to assert myself. I whispered to myself, a grin tugging at my lips. He thinks he owns everything, but he doesn't know who I'm becoming. Not yet. And when I do, everything changes.
I never expected anyone to truly help me, but then I met Liam again. We met at a quiet cafe after that seminar, and he slid into the chair across from me with a casual ease that annoyed me. "So you actually want to do this?" he asked, leaning forward. "Rise above him." I arched an eyebrow. "Depends on what this means. Are you offering advice, or are you trying to use me for your own benefit?" He chuckled, but I saw something honest in his eyes. "I want to help, but I won't lie. If I can gain something too, I won't refuse it. Fair?" I paused, considering. Trust was a luxury I didn't have, but I could use him. Carefully. "Fine," I said finally. "But I set the rules. One slip, and you're gone." He smiled. "Deal." Over the next few weeks, Liam proved useful. He gave me insider details about Damien's habits, his investments, and the people who really pulled the strings in his world. I listened carefully, storing every detail, but I never revealed my full story. Not yet. I had to remain a mystery. Meanwhile, I began making small moves in my new life. Freelance projects grew into consulting opportunities. I started attending business networking events, connecting with people Damien had overlooked. Every handshake, every casual conversation was a step toward building influence. One evening, Marcus leaned back in his chair as I told him about Liam. "Be careful," he said. "Allies with agendas can be dangerous, but sometimes they're necessary." "I know," I replied, though a flicker of doubt ran through me. I can't do this alone. And honestly, I think he genuinely wants to help." Marcus gave me a long look. Genuine doesn't exist in this world, but usefulness does. Keep that in mind. I nodded, swallowing my frustration. He was right, of course. Trust was dangerous. But for now, I had to focus on what mattered, building the foundation of my new life. Slowly, quietly, and strategically. By the end of the month, I had a network forming, a mix of loyal supporters, opportunists, and cautious observers. Liam was the key to several doors I wouldn't have reached on my own. And somewhere deep inside, I felt a thrill I hadn't felt since the day Damien humiliated me. The thrill of power growing quietly in my hands. I whispered into the night, smiling at my reflection. Soon, he'll see. He won't know who I am until it's too late. It was a normal morning, or at least I thought it was. I had a meeting scheduled with a potential client, one I'd been courting quietly for weeks. I was dressed in my sharpest suit, hair tied back neatly, confidence simmering beneath the surface. Everything was going perfectly until I looked up and saw him, Damien, standing at the reception of the building, casually surveying the office like he owned it. My heart stopped. My hands went cold. How did he even know I was here? I forced myself to stay calm. He didn't recognize me, of course, not yet. Sophia Kane wasn't the same person he had fired, but the fear that he might find out still made my stomach twist. I greeted the client, keeping my voice steady. "Good morning. I'm glad we could finally meet." The client smiled. "Likewise. I've heard great things about your work, Sophia." I nodded, keeping my focus, but my eyes flicked toward Damien periodically. He lingered in the lobby, talking to someone, laughing as if he owned the world. My pulse was racing. One misstep in my carefully built life could unravel. After the meeting, Leah met me outside. "You look like you saw a ghost." "I did," I admitted. "Damien was there. He might recognize me if I slip up." Liam's grin was reassuring. "Don't worry. You were invisible. He didn't see you. You're smarter than he thinks." I clenched my fists, my nerves still taut. This is too close. I need to be more careful. That night, I replayed the encounter over and over in my mind. Fear mixed with adrenaline and anger surged again. He's arrogant, careless. He never thinks ahead. That's my advantage. I realized something important. I couldn't just rebuild quietly. I had to anticipate his moves, predict his patterns, and stay 10 steps ahead. My next steps had to be flawless. Every ally, every project, every connection, nothing could be left to chance. By midnight, I had drafted contingency plans, backup identities, and strategies for keeping Damien completely unaware of my growth. I also realized something deeper. The close call had ignited something I hadn't felt in months, a thrill, not just fear, but power. The knowledge that I could survive even when he almost caught me. I whispered to myself, a fire building in my chest. He may be close, but I'm closer. I'm ready. And soon, it won't matter where he is, because I will be untouchable. Weeks turned into months, and I could feel the tide shifting. Every small victory, every successful project added layers to the empire I was quietly building. Clients trusted me, allies relied on me. Even people Damien considered untouchable were starting to notice my name. Sophia Kane was becoming more than a shadow. She was a force. One afternoon, Marcus and I sat in a quiet cafe reviewing my latest projects. "You've come a long way," he said, sipping his coffee. "Do you realize how many people are talking about you? And none of them know you were fired?" I smiled, a mixture of satisfaction and caution. "I've learned to play invisible until the moment I choose not to be." Marcus nodded. "Good. Keep it subtle. Let them underestimate you. That's when you're most dangerous." It wasn't subtle anymore. Not completely. The whispers had begun. Damien's name still carried weight, but Sophia Kane's reputation was growing too. I had taken over a major project in a sector Damien had ignored, earning praise from the board. Emails arrived in my inbox, invitations to events, connections waiting to be made. My influence was spreading like wildfire, all without him realizing I was the same woman he had humiliated. And yet, part of me couldn't resist testing him. Damien had always been predictable. I let little breadcrumbs slip. Industry news, a minor collaboration, something that would get his attention without revealing myself. Sure enough, a week later, a former colleague sent me a message. "Did you see Damien's face at the board meeting? He looked unsettled." I chuckled softly. Unsettled is a good start. Liam, always the opportunist, noticed it too. "You're playing with fire. You've got him rattled, but if he figures out who you are..." I shook my head. "Not yet. Patience. Every move has to be calculated." By the end of the month, I had cemented my position in two key sectors, while Damien's arrogance had begun to show cracks. A project he oversaw floundered, while mine thrived. The satisfaction was sweet, but I didn't let it cloud my judgment. Every success was another brick in the foundation of my ultimate plan.
That night, I looked in the mirror, seeing Sophia Kane fully formed, confident, strategic, untouchable. And I whispered softly to the woman I used to be, "One day, you'll see him fall, and you'll know it was worth every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of fear."
I thought I had learned to trust carefully. I thought I had built walls around myself that even the strongest betrayal couldn't breach. I was wrong. It started with a casual message from Liam. "Hey, got something interesting to share. Meet me?" I should have ignored it. I should have trusted my instincts. But curiosity and the faint hope that he was genuinely loyal pushed me to agree. We met at a quiet bar, the kind where shadows hid secrets. "So, what's this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Liam leaned in, his expression too casual. "I know Damien's next moves. I have connections, inside info. I can help you take the next big step." I felt a flicker of hope, but then he laughed softly, a sound that immediately made me uneasy. But first, his words were smooth, almost playful. "I need something in return." My stomach sank. "What do you mean?" "You'll see. Let's just say someone in your past might not be as far behind you as you think." Something clicked in my mind. The pieces fell together too quickly. He was using me, feeding information to a rival, possibly even Damien, while pretending to help. My pulse raced. Anger, disbelief, and betrayal twisted into a sharp knot in my chest. "You," I began, my voice shaking. "Relax," he said with a shrug. "It's business. You do the same if you were me. Don't take it personally." I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "Get out of my life," I spat, every ounce of fury burning through me. "I trusted you. I was wrong. Never come near me again." He smirked, stood, and left without another word. The betrayal cut deeper than Damien's public humiliation ever had. I felt hollow, furious, and utterly alone. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at the plans I had built, wondering if they were now in jeopardy. But slowly, the fire inside me reignited, sharper than ever. Betrayal was nothing new. Pain was temporary. The world had tried to break me twice, once publicly, once in secret, and I had survived. I whispered to myself, voice trembling but resolved. If he thinks this can stop me, he's wrong. I will rise, I will grow stronger, and the next time someone betrays me, it will be their downfall, not mine. Betrayal hurt, but it didn't break me. If anything, it sharpened me. Liam's treachery was a lesson. Trust sparingly, rely on myself, and build walls that no one could breach. I buried my anger deep, using it as fuel while I quietly rebuilt my network, my skills, and my influence. I spent weeks analyzing every move Damien had made, every weakness he had shown in board meetings, every mistake he had ignored. I refined my strategies, streamlined my projects, and strengthened my alliances with people I knew were loyal, or at least useful. This time, no one could sabotage me. One evening, Marcus joined me at my apartment. He sipped his tea quietly before speaking. "You're stronger than ever. But remember, power isn't just about influence. It's about perception. Control what they see, and you control them." "I know," I said, scrolling through my latest client reports. "I've learned my lesson. No more surprises, no more risks I can't handle." By the next month, my careful rebuilding paid off. Key projects that Damien had overlooked were now under my guidance, thriving in ways he never imagined. Clients reached out to me directly, praising my vision, my insight, my efficiency. And Damien? He started to feel the cracks in his empire. His project stalled, his colleagues whispered behind closed doors, and his arrogance began to falter. Sometimes I allowed myself a quiet smile. I didn't need to confront him yet. Karma was moving in its own way. Damien's downfall was subtle at first. A missed deadline here, a failed pitch there, but it was happening. Slowly, inevitably. That night, I stood by my window, looking out at the city lights. The skyline was bright, alive, and so was I. Every betrayal, every heartbreak, every sleepless night had led me here. I whispered softly, almost to myself, I am untouchable now, and when the time comes, he will regret ever underestimating me. I never imagined this moment would feel so calm. Damien stood across from me in the boardroom, the man who had humiliated me publicly months ago. Only now he looked different, tense, uncertain, stripped of the arrogance that had once made him untouchable. Sophia Kane, he said slowly, his voice carrying disbelief. You're here? I smiled politely, letting my confidence fill the room. Yes, Damien, I'm here, and it seems we have a lot to discuss. He blinked, clearly struggling to recognize me. Wait, this can't be. How? I know you didn't expect to see me like this, I said, interrupting him, my tone calm but firm. But I've been building, learning, growing. You dismissed me once. You humiliated me once. And now I'm in control. His eyes narrowed, confusion and fear mingling there. Control? What are you talking about? I'm talking about the projects you neglected, the opportunities you missed, the people you underestimated. I'm talking about the empire you thought you owned. It's changing hands, Damien, quietly, efficiently. And you're powerless to stop it. He swallowed hard, his lips tightening. This isn't fair. Life isn't fair, I said softly, leaning against the table. You taught me that. You taught me how cruel people could be, and I learned. I grew. And now I rise while you stumble. His face twisted in anger, but he said nothing. I let silence stretch between us, letting him feel the weight of everything I had endured. My calmness, my confidence, my transformation. It was the sharpest weapon I had. Finally, he broke the silence. You've changed. You're, I, I've always been capable. You just never saw it. And that was your mistake. The confrontation didn't need violence, shouting, or drama. My presence, my composure, my quiet power, it was enough. Damien realized, finally, that the woman he had once humiliated was no longer the same. The game had shifted. I walked out of the boardroom that day with my head held high, a small, victorious smile playing on my lips. Karma wasn't loud, flashy, or cruel. It was inevitable, and I had simply let it work its course. I watched from the sidelines, quietly, as Damien's world began to unravel. The cracks I had noticed months ago had widened, and every careless move he made only sped his downfall. It was subtle at first, a failed pitch here, a missed deadline there, but soon the whispers grew louder. Colleagues who once admired him began to question his judgment. His arrogance, once his shield, was now his weakness. One afternoon, I received a message from a mutual acquaintance. Did you hear? Damien's project collapsed today. Board's furious. I smiled faintly. It wasn't joy in someone else's pain, at least not entirely. It was satisfaction in justice. Damien had taught me that cruelty had consequences, and I was witnessing it play out naturally. Later that week, I ran into Elena. Her eyes widened when she saw me, as if sensing the storm I had become. You, you're incredible, she said softly. He, he didn't see this coming, did he? No, I said, sipping my coffee. He never did. That's the thing about arrogance. It blinds people. Damien tried to reach me once, a flurry of messages and calls, but I ignored them all. The man who once controlled my life now begged for attention, for validation, for anything, and I didn't give it to him. I spent that evening reflecting on the journey, the humiliation, the betrayal, the sleepless nights, the relentless work. Everything had shaped me. I was no longer a victim. I was someone who understood power, patience, and justice. Marcus sent me a short message. You did it. You've risen without losing yourself. I smiled, thinking of every step, the lessons, the pain, the growth. Karma had done its work, but so had I. And for the first time in a long time, I felt complete. Not because I had caused someone else's suffering, but because I had survived it and emerged stronger. I whispered into the quiet night. This is what growth feels like. This is what justice feels like. And now, it's my world. The skyline glimmered under the evening sun as I stood by my office window, looking down at the city I had quietly conquered. The woman who had once been humiliated, betrayed, and underestimated now held power, influence, and respect. Sophia Kane wasn't just a name anymore. It was a symbol. I thought back to the day Damien fired me, how small, humiliated, and worthless I had felt. How every colleague's whisper had echoed in my mind, reminding me of my failures. I had thought that day was the end, but it had been the beginning, the spark that ignited everything. Elena had come to visit me that morning, her eyes wide with admiration. I still can't believe it, she said, pouring coffee for both of us. You've done all of this, and you. I mean, you didn't lose yourself. I smiled softly. It wasn't easy, I admitted. There were times I wanted to give up, times I felt like I'd never get out from under the weight of what happened. But I learned something. Strength isn't about never breaking. It's about rising every time you do. She nodded, glancing around at the sleek office, the bustling team, and the organized chaos I now commanded. And Damien? I sipped my coffee, letting the thoughts settle. Damien had lost everything he had taken for granted. His arrogance had become his downfall, a quiet karma unfolding without my hand touching it directly. He had reached out once, through emails, calls, and messages, begging for advice, recognition, a lifeline. But I ignored them all. The man who once controlled my life now had no power over me. Not anymore. Instead, I focused on the people who had supported me, who had stayed loyal, or at least true to their word. Liam was gone, of course. His betrayal had been the final lesson in trust. Never place your fate entirely in someone else's hands. But the others, my allies, my new network, were thriving too, and I had helped them rise alongside me. Power, I realized, was far sweeter when it was shared carefully, when it was earned, not stolen. That afternoon, I walked into the main office, where my team waited. "Good work on the new campaign," I said, smiling at each of them. "I know it's been tough, but we did it. Together." One of my junior associates grinned. "We couldn't have done it without your guidance. You've changed the way we work, Sophia. You've changed everything." I felt a surge of pride, tempered by humility. "I'm proud of all of you. Remember this, strength isn't just in power. It's in resilience, determination, and the courage to rise after every fall." Later, when the office quieted down, I sat at my desk, staring at the city below. The reflection of lights danced in my eyes, mirroring the fire that had always burned within me. I thought of every betrayal, every sleepless night, every tear and heartbreak. Every moment had shaped me, tempered me like steel. I pulled out an old notebook, the one I had carried when I left my old city, scribbling ideas for my reinvention. I read the first lines I had written months ago. "I will not be broken. I will rise. One day, he'll regret everything." I laughed softly, a sound full of victory and release. Yes, I had risen, and the person who had caused so much pain had paid his dues, quietly, naturally. But my focus had shifted. It was no longer about revenge. It was about life, growth, and the endless possibilities ahead. Elena returned to the office later, bringing news of a major opportunity. A partnership with a prestigious international firm, one Damien had once dreamed of but never achieved. "They want Sophia Kane," she said, beaming, "and they want to work with us." I smiled, feeling the full weight of the journey. "Good," I said. "Let's show them what we're capable of." That evening, I left the office, walking through the streets bathed in the golden glow of sunset. The world felt vast, open, and full of potential. Every challenge I had faced, the public humiliation, the betrayals, the sleepless nights, had led me here. I had survived. I had grown. I had transformed. I stopped by a small park watching children play, couples laugh, and strangers pass by. A sense of peace settled over me. Power wasn't just about influence or revenge. It was about control over my own life, my emotions, and my choices. And I had achieved that. I whispered softly to the wind, almost as if speaking to the past me, the one who had cried in silence that day Damien fired me. "You are no longer afraid. You are no longer broken. This is your world now, and it's only the beginning." As night fell, I returned to my apartment, the city lights reflecting in my eyes. I sat at my desk, writing plans for the future, ideas for growth, for success, for life beyond the pain. I was no longer defined by what had happened to me. I was defined by who I had become. And in that quiet moment, I realized something profound. The woman who had once been humiliated was dead. Sophia Kane, the reborn, confident, powerful woman, was here. Strong, unstoppable, and ready for anything life had to throw at her. I closed my eyes, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The journey had been painful, full of betrayal, heartbreak, and struggle, but it had forged me into someone I could be proud of. I whispered one last time, a vow to myself and to the world. I am reborn. I am unbreakable. And my story has only just begun.